I'm Jimmy. Today's day 182 of reading. Today I'm reading Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Let's get started. We're on page 315. Hoped to enter the Ministry of Magic, he needed top grades. He was becoming increasingly edgy and gave very severe punishments to anyone who disturbed the quiet of the common room in the evenings. In fact, the only person who seemed more anxious than Percy was Hermione. Harry and Ron had given up asking her how she was managing to attend several classes at once, but they couldn't restrain themselves when they saw the exam schedule she had drawn up for herself. The first column read, Monday, 9 o'clock, Arithmancy, 9 o'clock, Transfiguration, lunch, 1 o'clock, Charms, 1 o'clock, Ancient Ruins. Hermione? Ron said cautiously, because she was liable to explode when interrupted these days. Are you sure you've copied down these times right? What? Snapped Hermione, picking up the exam schedule and examining it. Yes, of course I have. Is there any point in asking how you're going to sit for 2 exams at once? Said Harry. No, said Hermione shortly. Have either of you seen my copy of Numerology and Grammatica? Oh, yeah, I borrowed it for a bit of bedtime reading, said Ron, but very quietly. Hermione started shifting heaps of parchment around her table, looking for the book. Just then, there was a rustle at the window, and Hedwig fluttered through it, and now clutched tight in her beak. It's from Hagrid, said Harry, ripping the note open. Buckbeak's appeal. It's set for the 6th. That's the day we finish our exams, said Hermione, still looking everywhere for her Arithmancy books. And they're coming up here to do it, said Harry, still reading from the letter. Someone from the Ministry of Magic and an executioner. Hermione looked up, startled. They're bringing the executioner to the pew? But that sounds as though they've already decided. Yeah, it does, said Harry slowly. They can't, Ron howled. I spent ages reading up on stuff for him. They can't just ignore it all. But Harry had a horrible feeling that the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures had its mind made up for it by Mr. Malfoy. Draco had been noticeably subdued since Gryffindor's triumph in the Quidditch field final, seemed to regain some of his old swagger over the next few days. From sneering comments Harry overheard, Malfoy was certain Buckbeak was going to be killed, and seemed thoroughly pleased with himself for bringing it about. It was all Harry could do to stop himself imitating Hermione and hitting Malfoy in the face on these occasions. And the worst of all was that they had no time or opportunity to go and see Hagrid because the strict new security measures had not been lifted, and Harry didn't dare retrieve his invisibility cloak from below the one-eyed witch. Exam week began, and an unusual and natural hush fell over the castle. As the third years emerged from Transfiguration at lunchtime on Monday, limp and ashen-faced, comparing results and bemoaning the difficulty of the task they had been set, which had included turning Teapot into a tortoise. Hermione irritated the rest by fussing about how her tortoise had looked more like a turtle, which was the least of everyone else's worries. Mine still had a spout for a tail. What a nightmare! Were tortoises supposed to breathe steam? It still had a willow-patterned shell. Do you think that'll count against me? Then, after a hasty lunch, it was straight back upstairs for the Charms exam. Hermione had been right. Professor Flitwick did indeed test them on cheering charms. Harry slightly overdid his nerves, and Ron, who was partnering him, ended up in fits of hysterical laughter and had to be led away to a quiet room for an hour before he was ready to perform the charm himself. After dinner, the students hurried back to their common rooms, not to relax, but to start studying for care of magical creatures, potions, and astronomy. Hagrid presided over the care of magical creatures exam the following morning with a very preoccupied air indeed. His heart didn't seem to be in at all. He had provided a large tub of fresh flower worms for the class and told them that to pass the test, their flower worm had to still be alive at the end of 1 hour. As the flower worms flourished best and left on their own devices, it was the easiest exam any of them had ever taken, and also gave Harry, Ron, and Hermione plenty of opportunities to speak to Hagrid. Beaky's getting a bit depressed, Hagrid told them, bending low on the pretense of checking that Harry's flower worm was still alive. Been cooped up on too long. But still, we'll know day after tomorrow, one way or another. They had potions that afternoon, which was an unqualified disaster. Try as Harry might, he couldn't get his confusing concoction to sink in, and Snape, standing watch from an air of vindictive pleasure, scribbled something that looked suspiciously like a 0 onto his notes before moving away. Then came astronomy at midnight, up on the tallest tower, history magic on Wednesday morning, in which Harry scribbled everything Florian Fortescue had ever told him about medieval witch hunts, while wishing he could have had Fortescue's chocolate nut sundaes with him in the stifling classroom. Wednesday afternoon meant herbology in the greenhouses under a baking hot sun. Then back to the common room once more with summer next, thinking longingly of this time next day, when it would all be over. The second to last exam, on Thursday morning, was Defense Against the Dark Arts. Professor Lupin had compiled the most unusual exam any of them had ever taken, a sort of obstacle course outside in the sun, where they had to wade across a deep paddling pool containing a Grindylow, cross a series of potholes full of red caps, squish their ways across a patch of marsh while ignoring misleading directions from a hinky pug, then climb into an old trunk and battle with the new boggart. Excellent, Harry, Lupin muttered as Harry climbed out of the trunk, grinning. Full marks. Flushed with his success, Harry hung around to watch Ron and Hermione. Ron did very well until he reached the hinky puck, which successfully confused him into sinking waist high into the quagmire. Hermione did everything perfectly until she reached the trunk with the boggart in it. After about a minute inside it, she burst out again, screaming. Hermione, said Lupin, startled. What's the matter? Professor McGonagall, Hermione gasped, pointing into the trunk. She said I failed everything. It took a little while to calm Hermione down. When at last she had regained a grip on herself, she, Harry, and Ron went back to the castle. Ron was still slightly inclined to laugh at Hermione's boggart, but an argument was averted by the sight that met them on top of the steps. Cornelius Fudge, sweating slightly in his pinstripe cloak, was standing there staring out at the ground. He stared at the sight of Harry. Hello there, Harry, he said. Just had an exam, I expect. Nearly finished? Yes, said Harry. Hermione and Ron, not being on speaking terms with the Minister of Magic, hovered awkwardly in the background. Lovely day, said Fudge, casting an eye over the lake. Pity, pity. He sighed deeply and looked down at Harry. I'm here on an unpleasant mission, Harry. The Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures required a witness to the execution of a mad hippogriff. As I needed to visit Hogwarts to check on the Black situation, I was asked to step in. Does that mean the appeal's already happened? Ron interrupted, stepping forward. No, it's scheduled for this afternoon, said Fudge, looking curiously at Ron. Then you might not have to witness an execution after all, said Ron stoutly. The hippogriff might get off. But before Fudge could answer, 2 wizards came to the castle behind him. One was so ancient he appeared to be withering before their very eyes, and the other was tall and strapping, with a thin black mustache. Harry gathered that they were representatives of the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures, because the very old wizard squinted toward Hagrid's cabin and said in a feeble voice, Dear, I'm getting too old for this. 2 o'clock, isn't it, Fudge? Harry, the black-mustached man was fingering something in his belt. Harry